Welcome back to Built to Ship, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with founders and product leaders shipping real AI products in the world. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Arko, co-founder and CEO of Pipeshift, a modular orchestration platform for building open source AI components, everything from embeddings and vector databases, LLMs, and more, all deployable across any cloud or on-prem. Pipeshift is YC backed, and actually we were in the same batch together, so we go way back to those YC days. Thanks for joining, Arko.
Thanks for having me, Tyler. I mean, same batch, same group. So,
Yep.
Thanks for having me. Really excited.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So I wanted to start with kind of your background. Tell me a bit about what you were doing before Pipeshift. I think it's a pretty interesting story, and then also what gave you the idea for Pipeshift, and why'd you start this business?
Before Pipeshift, I was pretty much in college, if I have to place it like that. I did my undergrad in India in this college called Manipal Institute of Technology. Infamously, the only thing that people know about it is that Satya Nadella comes from there. That's the only thing people know about the college. That's where I did my undergrad. I met my co-founders as well over there. We were actually first year, like the freshman year roommates during our undergrad. I was running a health tech startup, which we bootstrapped and we were running profitably for like a couple of years. But we never really hit like the venture scale PMF. We also felt like it's not really a space that we wanted to spend too much time in. And we decided to move out of it to things that we like more, which was more SaaS and more tech. And then AI was coming into the world of it. We had some early experience of reading about BERT and other language models that are coming out. So when, OpenAI announced GPT, ChatGPT came out and they announced GPT APIs for the first time. We were probably one of the first few people, amongst the first few people for sure, to try it out, see what are the capabilities now. I did see a couple of my friends were working for companies who had the early beta of GPT-2 and had seen what GPT-2 back then could do. And it was really impressive compared to the world that I come from in the beginning, which was OpenCV for vision and then like traditional NLP models for language, really robotics, flow-based chatbots. So I think it was impressive beforehand itself. And when we saw GPT-3, we were like, okay, we have to do something in this. We understand this more. By background, all three of us come from a hardware background to a certain extent. And the pandemic was what pushed us into software. So we were all in robotics. We were all building robots for surveillance and defense use cases like rescue and terrain mapping, etc. During college, we had set up a research lab, but then when the pandemic came, it pushed us into looking at software. And in software also, we wanted to be close to AI. So we used to train a lot of vision models, a lot of path planning algorithms. So those were the things we worked on rather than the traditional software engineering. And that's when we were like, we are probably best placed to understand how these work and build something in AI early on. We started building this enterprise search product and knowledge management product at core that was very similar to what maybe a Glean does now on a very high level. But like it would combine together an Otter and a Glean, as well as some amount of what a lot of these sales co-pilot companies are doing in one. We were very early on this, so the models were not that great back in the day. It's 2023, end of 2022, early 2023 is when we had started. But fortunately, we started getting a few enterprise customers. We got this one oil and gas customer who was like, I need everything on-prem and nothing should go to OpenAI. And that's when we started trying to work with, say, the Llama 2 models and the Mistral 7B that was there, which were the first two open source models coming out. There were more, but these were the main ones that came out back then. And we started trying to deploy it, run it on-prem, and that's when we started seeing the challenges. And as we engaged more with that customer, and we started talking to more and more AI companies, we started understanding that at some point or the other, when people are going towards production or the workloads are becoming bigger, companies need to start in-housing their stack to gain flexibility and control over their systems. It's not just about the fact that it's a public API from OpenAI or Anthropic. It's also about the fact that you cannot control a lot of these models' qualities because of how large these models are. So if you have very specific tasks and if you have really private information, you might just want to go for a smaller 8B or a 70B model that you can bias with the amount of data you have. Or it might just be around your ownership issues where even if you fine tune GPT models, Anthropic models, you'll not really get the ownership of these models. Then there was this whole barrage of SaaS companies or Copilot companies who were coming to us and saying, we are speaking to enterprises, but they want VPC deployments. They need on-prem deployments. And for a company, you can definitely keep a model swappable stack where you can be like, it works with OpenAI, it works with Anthropic, it works with Gemini, it works with any model. But what happens is as you make those abstractions, your capabilities also start diminishing because your underlying model capabilities are varying so much across models. Not for basic tasks, which is still okay. But if these are specialized tasks, then as a company post, say, a 0 to 1 journey, you would look to train a few core use cases on your own data for your own models, just to have the flexibility of being able to deploy wherever you want and being able to have the predictability of outcomes because already these models are so non-deterministic at core, and the entropy is really high. You just don't know. It's a black box. Same prompt can give you two different answers. So that's largely what we realized is happening, and a lot more people started pushing for open source. And as you can see, the markets also now they're picking up with DeepSeek, Quen, Llama, Mistral. It's all picking up, and even so much so that even OpenAI is now talking about probably open sourcing some small models in the future.
Interesting.
And that's largely what we kind of wanted to go ahead and help people with. We're like, cool. MLOps traditionally was a hard problem, but it was never a problem that made a lot of business sense because it would run on CPUs. So nobody needed optimizations as much. These were really cheap compute. Now with GPUs, compute became really expensive, and you needed like just one extra GPU means $3,000 to $5,000 more on your monthly costs. So now it just makes sense for you to work with specialized teams who can come in and help you manage these workloads. So that's largely what pushed us into looking at pivoting from an application layer to an infrastructure layer. And that's how Pipeshift was born.
Love it. Yeah. It's like very driven. Your story is very driven, and your company's journey is very driven by like what you actually saw in your own experience and then in your customer's experience, which is really cool. You mentioned that one of the things that you realized as you were building these systems yourselves was that it was like not super simple to deploy and manage. What's the biggest challenge that you see your customers face that Pipeshift solves, like in terms of deployment or hosting, etc.?
I think the biggest challenge is TCO, total cost of ownership at core. So people can use open source models from API providers out there who are literally having a race to the bottom of throwing more money at it and subsidizing costs and getting like 10 cents per million tokens, 20 cents per million tokens. What people don't realize is that's not the model that works with the kind of customers we work with who require dedicated compute. Because just to give you an example, say Voker and Pipeshift, both are two companies and both are using an API from a provider. And suddenly Voker gets a lot of requests, or maybe there's a bot that's hammering requests to Voker and say, I was an application company and I'm also using the same deployment. There will be peak time performance differences. So for companies who are working in environments where SLAs are important, latencies are important, production grade reliability is important, that is a really risky model. So the flip side of this is when you go into a place where you have dedicated compute, where you can partition memory. So maybe just have 20 gigs of the GPU rather than having the 80 gigs, and slot more models, but at least reserving that 20 gigs for that model, and then being able to scale up, scale down rapidly. So that if there is no usage, you can scale down to zero. But if there's sudden usage, you can have like a sub 1 minute cold start and just get everything up and running and start running it. And if there is scale up required, you can scale things up and then scale things down, back down. So it's a lot of the problem is around this TCO problem, because the only answer till date was you go ahead and use an API, which is per token, or you go ahead and start reserving GPUs for a month and start deploying models on it, which is like $15,000. So there's a huge gap. So what we're trying to do right now is giving you a pay as you go like experience as you move from an API to like a dedicated, long term, reliable system where things can just scale up, scale down as per your requirements. You can partition out memory and utilize as much memory you need for your production workload and concurrency, and it will scale up flexibly. It becomes pay as you go. Still, you don't have the bottlenecks of an API. And parallelly, GPU memories are really inefficient. So if you look at even an AWS deployments, they'll probably get you 1,000 to 2,000 tokens per second of throughput on A100s for smaller models, while we can give you like 6,000 without compressing the model, pruning the model, or quantizing the model, purely because we are able to ship custom CUDA kernels and write our own inference pipelines that allows us to free up memory faster and make it more optimized for you. So you get more dollar efficiency on the memory that you reserve as well. So if you reserve small amount of memory, it's scaling up, scaling down, scales to zero. But whenever it's up and running, it will handle a lot more requests than what it would if you had just started using like off the shelf stack that your cloud provider offers by default. So I think that allows you to reduce the TCO, and I think that's what we're trying to solve for people.
Amazing. Yeah. So it sounds like you mentioned there are these like API providers that are in a race to the bottom. But if I'm understanding correctly, is the differentiation that they are, you know, kind of sharing the same hardware, and so then like one company is going to be impacted by another, and then for you guys, it's not like that. They have dedicated space. Is that like on physical GPUs that you guys own, or can you clarify that a bit more for me? Of like, how do you actually ensure there isn't that crossover between the Voker and the Pipeshift like requests?
Yeah, I mean, for us, every deployment is dedicated, which means that if you reserve one A100 for a workload, and if you scale to zero, then that might be used by another company. But if suddenly a request comes, another A100 will spin up and quickly move your workloads to it in sub 1 minute, like in less than 1 minute of full start, and get you the up and running, and your workloads will start running. If you reserve maybe just a fraction of an A100 or an H100, let's say 20 gigabytes, then only that much memory will be reserved, and the rest 60 gigabytes will be used by someone else. It can be three other people who are using 20, it can be 120, 140, somebody can reserve 60, whatever it might be. But at core, the goal is if you reserve some amount of compute for your workloads, that compute will always be dedicated, that much compute will always be dedicated to you, so that the concurrency that you're hitting, say you have a peak of 10, or like you have a peak of maybe 5 requests per second, or 5 concurrent requests that can be managed on it will never give you different speeds on it. So you have reliability and latency, like you know how much latency you'll get, you'll know how what's the speed going to be like. So when you go to a customer and you're running, say, a voice agent, or you're going to a customer and you're like, I'll give you an SLA for a sub 800 millisecond latency, or my response times will be 2 seconds across all use cases, and you give those SLAs, we guarantee you that reliability, which you can't have with API providers, because there it's just a cost problem where you're like, OpenAI is expensive, I want a cheaper API. But that comes with every bottleneck of those APIs as well. These are not private, these are shared, these are not really as secure and optimized because
Hmm.
they are optimizing for the dollar efficiency on each token. But
Interesting.
our case is very different. Like, so the use cases that we go after might just be very different to what an API provider is serving.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, like, what are the use cases? Are there any themes that you're seeing across? I mean, you guys work with so many companies because you're an, infrastructure provider, and you're not like, right, you're not specific to a single vertical. Do you see, you know, either like certain industries, or even just like what are the use cases that companies are getting the highest value out of AI with, on the actual
Um,
application side?
I'll probably place this as more of, rather than a use case, I will probably place this as specific kinds of workloads. What I mean by that is we have three major types. The best type of the companies that get the most out of Pipeshift are people who have gone into production to validate the have validated the use case and want to go into production, and they want things like lower latencies, better speeds, they want more uptime, they want SLAs on performances, so their teams can build things uh, according to it. Their sales teams can go and sell the product with that reliability. And the reason they are moving to open source can be varied. They can go for accuracy, they can go for ownership. They have varied reasons. But like at core, if they've gone to an open source model, the reason they would come to us is because they are now going into production. And they have validated that this use case works, Llama works for this, DeepSeek works for this, and we need help with deploying it.
Do they
Now,
do they what does that process look like? Do they consult with you at all around, like, did they explain to you what the use case they're building is, or do you guys not even know, like, that they already proved it out and now they're shipping it to production, but you're not sure, like, is this a sales bot or a, property real estate analysis? Do you not
yeah,
know?
I mean, we do know now because we are not, so our product is going to go into like public beta like in the next 1 month period. Run. So until now, I definitely know because every customer that gets access, I have been in touch with them because we were like baking the product with them. Now, so for all of them, I know. I don't know how it's going to be on the long term because a lot of people can just sign up and start using it.
Yeah.
So we have to probably figure out ways to understand that behavior. But for now, we pretty much speak to everyone. So
Hmm.
it's like they'll have a call with us. They'll be like, this is the workload we are running. Sometimes they don't mention what exactly is the workload, but they're like, we want to run a Llama or we want to run DeepSeek and we want this latency, we want this uptime, this performance. And these are the GPUs we have. Can Pipeshift do it? And for example, sometimes it might be a bit unrealistic. They'll be like, give me a sub 100 millisecond latency on a large, on a 70B model, and I have just four L40, like L4 GPUs. I'm like, that's probably like a far fetch. But then it's our responsibility to tell them that, hey, then maybe we can look at slightly smaller models if your budgets for the computer are not going up. Otherwise,
Hmm.
maybe increase the budget a bit, go for maybe an L40S instead of an L4. You don't need to go to A100s or H100s. So
It sounds like
there is,
that's like a key part of your value is like you're consulting with them because you guys are experts on like what's the right there's so many models out there. They're, like you said, they continue to get bigger, better, and different types of hardware. So you guys are helping explain to them, hey,
yeah, I
you want
mean,
this, but it's
we,
not
for sure.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely, I think we are so early in the AI adoption curve. A lot of people start calling out for winners and like laggards and trends. And I'm like, it's just too early. 12, it's a 10-12 year cycle. And you're probably in second or third year right now. It's baby steps, right? You don't even know how it's going to pan out. So it's so early. The talent and the knowledge is like so concentrated. We feel like we are one of those few companies who actually are living, breathing infrastructure every single day. So we probably are best placed to help a company because they'll probably not even be able to hire for this kind of a role. And even if they do, it's probably not in their right in like they don't really have an incentive to hire for this role internally because they might just be an application company for whom just working with a partner makes sense. So this is part of our support in a way. And if we guide you well, I mean, at core, the goal is to make sure your workloads are running, your workloads are working well. Fine. If that's not happening, then I don't not deriving that, giving you value. So I think that's definitely a core piece. And yeah, after this, we pretty much understand what the requirements are, share some benchmarks, run some benchmarks on our end, share those with them. If they're satisfied, we are good to go. Go on with the POC, give them access to our infra, ask them where they want the deployment. If they want the deployment on their cloud or their servers, we go ahead and do that. Or if they want it on our cloud or our SaaS model, then we go ahead with that. And that's how it goes.
Amazing. I wanted to shift gears just slightly, and not only are you guys so close and experts on the hardware and infrastructure side, you're also very aware of like all the different models that come out, and the open source space in general. I'm also very bullish on the long term of more people are going to need inference as they learn, as the adoption curve we go further along the adoption curve. There's going to be bigger and better, and or even smaller and better like open source models over time. um, what trends are you seeing, and like what's your if, for folks who don't have the time or don't have the expertise to be so in the know about everything that's coming out, like are there less models coming out now but they're better? Are there like, is it accelerating the number of open source models coming out? What can you tell us about the space?
I think it's the similar trend as closed source, which is that you will see a convergence of players. It's just expensive to become a model company. So you'll probably eventually have. It's very similar to how operating systems worked. You had Mac, you had Windows, you had Linux, and then you had a few distributions of Linux that picked up. Uh, so that's pretty much how we are looking at it, where you'll have an OpenAI, Anthropic, and Gemini, and on the open source side, I mean, across all our customers, we only see very specific models. There are either versions of Llamas, there are versions of Mistrals, there are versions of Gemma, there are DeepSeek and Quen models as well. Banking doesn't use it much because these are Chinese models, but I mean, these are really good models. So a lot of startups also use those. And in some scenarios, like in the Middle East, we see some amount of Falcon getting picked up. Or in India, we have these models from Servam, which is the OpenAI like company for India, which is building Indian models, picking up. So we have very specific companies that we are seeing models come out from that people want to use. They're not really, I don't see most production grade companies going into Hugging Face and testing out 100 models of some random model that somebody put out on Hugging Face by fine tuning a llama or something like that. And that's largely what we are seeing on the model side. So I think it's going to converge, and you'll have a handful of players, and they'll have multiple versions of models across different modalities, and people will choose from that. You'll have like a catalog of models that you work on top of. And the second trend that we are seeing is people are going beyond LLMs. So a lot of workloads that are coming to us now are around running custom Whisper for transcription, or having Whisper with diarization, where you can transcribe a meeting and know speaker one, speaker two, and know which speaker is speaking when. A lot of use cases are coming from people who are trying to in-house their RAG. So managing their vector DB, training custom embeddings on top of, say, BGE or Nomic, all of these embeddings that they have, and being able to train those embeddings and host those embedding models in-house. So that it's not just the LLM, but your embedding actually helps a lot more in accuracy, because then you're retrieving the right context for these models. So we are seeing definitely these trends that people are going beyond just looking at it as an LLM and looking at the entire AI system as truly compound, where you have voice use cases, you have vision use cases, you have embeddings, some use cases where RAG is being used, so the embeddings are probably more critical there than the LLM. And I think these are the two major trends that we're seeing. That people are not looking at too many models; it's very concentrated, and people are looking at their breaking down their systems more granularly than saying it's one API call to one large model that does voice, text, image at the same time, rather than saying we'll have specialized workloads running in parallel. And that's also what we allow, because everything can scale up, scale down, everything can have compute as per the need of the workload. So you actually have flexibility and pay as you go, like behavior on the pricing.
Super insightful. Yeah, you're so much closer to all those trends, so it's really interesting to hear. Um, Thanks for sharing. Okay, the last topic I wanted to cover was just taking a step out of like the deep infra layer and actually going to applications. What AI tools, SaaS, or just how do you use AI in your business? Like you guys, as you're running your business, building it, um, what are the tools or ways you use AI?
I mean, biggest would be on engineering because I mean, we are a team of roughly like 10, 11 people, and including the founders, and about eight or nine of us like are just engineers because that's what we sell at the end of the day. It's engineering problem that we solve for. So I mean, like coding co-pilots across Cursor, having using Anthropic all the time, Sonnet all the time for coding, an assistance that's there. Um, me and my me and the growth team, like the growth, there's no team, just one other, like two people, like me and the other founding member on the growth side. We are like always sitting on ChatGPT and Anthropic and Cloud to work on things. We use, we have started using sales automation tools for. I think I was telling you before the recording, we have started using tools for outreach and sales enablement to like get like increase our top of funnel. We are trying to look at it from a content based lead generation point of view on the long term as well. That's something we are working on. I mean, by default, in almost in every aspect for finance and accounting, we work with AI companies who have AI baked into everything from invoice reading to like automating as much of the finance as required. So it's not just about what we use, it's also about the vendors we work with. We also go for AI native vendors because they are just able to do things faster. And I think that's the best way for us to also use, say, a legal AI tool for ourselves and know what's the scope of using open source in legal. So I think it's just baked into every aspect that way. Some things that we still are trying to work on top of are how can we on the long term, again, because we're a small team right now, it's not a problem, but I think some uncharted territories would be how do you use AI in hiring, how do you get uh, AI in say like employee engagement when you have like larger teams and engage them, because we are a remote first company, so that becomes a huge problem. So I think those definitely are two things that we're looking at. Like HR tech is something that we definitely haven't looked at much. It's a small team, did not require a team.
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, yeah, really appreciate having you on and sharing your insights. I'm going to throw your website up on the screen right now, pipeshift.com. Any other place that people can follow along or interact with you or the company?
I mean, my LinkedIn is there. That's probably the most active piece of social media across the company. And
Great.
I mean, we were putting up a new website talking about all the products, all the features in the product that are coming out now. And at core, the focus is just helping people go from POC to production, because there's this thing that we believe in Pipeshift, which is playground is for kids. Your model should be in production,
Totally.
and that's largely what we do.
Amazing. Well, thanks
Yeah.
again, Arko. It was great having you on and good catching up. Really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me, and
All
great
right.
meeting you again after a while.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck moving into your new place and talk again soon.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Thank you so much. Thanks,